Welcome to Vigilant News Interviews. For our guest today, we have Chad Stewart. Chad Stewart, is an international award-winning and best-selling author, educator, and global strategist. Through his national school tours, Stewart traveled to 9,000 miles through 23 states, presenting at over 180 schools to more than 40,000 students. One of the most awarded novels in literature, Britfield and the Lost Crown, is a timeless classic transforming education and entertainment while fostering creativity, critical thinking, and bringing encouragement to children and families worldwide. The first live-action Britfield movie is projected to become one of the highest-grossing films in cinema history, rivaling the original Star Wars, 1977, E.T., 1982, and Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, 2005, and even the Harry Potter series. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. That was a great intro. I don't need to say anything.
Interviews
I've done all my work. I'm all set.
Right. So I had the pleasure of getting in touch with you through somebody that we reliably get awesome interviews from, and I was immediately interested in some of your material because Ryan and I are big into researching history, the occult origins of our society, all sorts of stuff, the religious framework. I mean, there's so much to get into that is often completely ignored in the mainstream. That actually influences a lot of the things in the mainstream, believe it or not. So I think we're gonna have an awesome conversation. Tell us a little bit about Britfield, and I want to ask you about how you got into all this.
Sure. I'm originally from Newport Beach, California, Southern California. I was back east in Wellesley, Massachusetts for 16 years. I did my undergraduate in British literature and European history, so that'll explain some of this. And then went on to postgraduate work and then graduate work, got my MBA. And I was actually an investment banker when this whole thing started. And so I was kind of on the dark side, But and I kind of worked my way up from Bank of America to Morgan Stanley to Merrill Lynch. And it was really 12 years ago. I was sent down to this really boring seminar in Providence, Rhode Island, and I think it was insurance. And I promised myself too, when I got back to grad school or any of these lectures, I'd always sit up in front. I'd take one page of notes and I wouldn't doodle, because that was kind of one of my problems, because I just got bored, right? And I think we all get bored with a lot of that stuff. But I started to drift and doodle, and I doodled a circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl, and I wrote the boy and the balloon, and suddenly, bang, that was like my moment that I just saw this whole exciting, fun story come to life. And I went home that weekend and literally on one piece of paper, just bullet points, I started to kind of orchestrate this story of this orphan, Tom, 12 years old, takes place in present time, starts up in Yorkshire, Northern England, and he's at this horrible orphanage called Weatherly Orphanage. And he's been an orphan his whole life. He's been at Weatherly for 6 years, and this is the year he's going to escape, but he's not going anywhere without his best friend, Sarah. And somewhere along the line, they commandeer a hot air balloon, but are relentlessly chased by the illustrious Detective Gowerstone. And they kind of travel from Weatherly to Oxford to London to Windsor to London, and then finally down to Canterbury. And we talk a little bit about that in the book and why I picked all of that and what's in these books that's I think in some ways really quite incredible. But I sat down, took me 4 years, 2,500 hours to write book 1, Britfield and Lost Crown. So again, anything with quality takes time. And it took me from concept to launching in August 2019, 10 years. 10 years of just building the team, raising the capital, and the right timing. And it was also 10 years of rejection, frustration, anger, depression, and but just staying the course. All of us have gifts, all of us have a certain calling, and that was mine. And there was distractions, and there was things that needed to be done. But boy, when we launched it in 2019, that was the time to launch it. And so since then, as you said, it's become a national bestseller. It's one of the most awarded books in children's fiction, and it's part of a 7-book series that will travel the world, and 7 movies that will follow.
Awesome. Wow.
So what are some of the core concepts and some of the stuff you're trying to convey to these audiences in this series?
Yeah, and I think what's so great about it is our youngest reader is 7, our oldest reader is 93. We've had 12-year-olds that have read the 384-page book in 5 hours. 55% of our reading audience are adults. And it's really these books are based on family, friendship, loyalty, courage, and faith. And the number one main theme is all about family, the importance of family. What does family mean? And as children are reading it, as adults are reading it, they're learning about geography, history, art, architecture, and culture. And we're also triggering and incorporating and threading through it the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. We're retraining and teaching the children of this generation how to think, what the schools mostly aren't doing anymore. And so we're trying to put creativity and critical thinking back into the schools and back into literature. So they're really transformational books.
Our show today is sponsored by The Wellness Company. You guys know we're always looking for the best health and wellness products to give you an edge. But if I eliminate businesses that have gone woke, don't know how many genders there are, or forced vaccine mandates on their employees, there are fewer and fewer companies that I can support. That's where The Wellness Company comes in. The Wellness Company was formed by a team of doctors who lost their jobs for speaking up about the vaccines and pushing back against lockdowns. The Wellness Company offers live telemedicine and a wide range of customer-formulated supplements to keep you at your best. My favorite Wellness Company product is their Spike Support Formula. It's the only one I've seen that contains ingredients researched to block and dissolve COVID spike proteins in the bloodstream. Now, we travel a lot, and spike shedding is a real concern. Taking daily spike support has brought me and can bring you better mental clarity and increased energy levels. Hundreds of other people, vaccinated or not, have reported similar results. Get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Go to twc.health/Badlands and use promo code Badlands to save 10% at checkout. That's twc.health/Badlands. Code Badlands. Insect repellents? You have a choice, but that choice is not hard. Everyone thinks that they all use DEET. DEET is a nasty hydrocarbon solvent with suspected health risks. Choose Zone products with picaridin. Picaridin has 12-hour proven protection against mosquitoes, ticks, chiggers, gnats, and no-see-ums. Zone products is safe and simply the best choice. Choose Zone products with picaridin for your family's health and enjoy the outdoors again. Drop the DEET and buy Zone products insect repellents with picaridin. Buy Zone products online. Use this QR code and save 10% using the promo code Badlands.
That's fantastic. Yeah, as far as I can tell, the one of the most utilized vehicles for propaganda and mind influence is literature and fiction. Arguably, it's kind of the OG version of that. And unfortunately, the conservatives or free-minding and critically thinking people, if we want to put that label on it, have kind of ceded the ground to the leftists and the globalists for a long time now. So it's really encouraging to know that this is happening, and it sounds like it's having a lot of success.
Yeah, it's actually in the top 1% of all books ever published as far as success. We're on parallel with outselling Harry Potter in the next 10 years, which is our goal. And I believe that will be done for a lot of reasons, and some we can discuss. We've actually outsold the first 3 Dan Brown books within the same time frame, and
Wow.
the first 3 James Bond books by Ian Fleming in the same time frame. And so it's exciting. And really everything we've done in the last 4 years for Britfield is just a soft launch. Next year is when we really go big and go global. But really, what we are is we're the opposite of Harry Potter, and we're bringing in like a real life story, to the children, and we're in this flashover substance society where 90% of the fiction out there is just crap. It's garbage. It's witchcraft. It's demigods. It's superheroes. It's occultism. And the big thing that the enemy has done is given you the choice. It's between good witches and bad witches. There are no good witches. It's between bad vampires and good vampires. There are no good vampires, and so that's really what we're sort of countering. And I think, and I'm starting to see it, and I've seen it in the last couple of weeks, and it is interesting, and it is kind of part of our plan. But it's to offer children something so authentic and real. We're feeding their mind and their soul with these books, and they're left with something real when they finish. And I think little by little, they'll look back at those stories like Harry Potter and kind of find them silly now. And they'll look at the movies and kind of find them silly. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I know they're great. They're exciting. They're enticing, the magic wand, the invisible cloak, all that stuff. It's very cool. I mean, I'm not saying cool in the sense that I enjoy it, but I get it. I get how that's enticing to kids. But it's such a removal from from reality. And I think they read books like Britfield and Lost Crown or Britfield and the Rise of the Lion, Britfield and Return of the Prince, as we kind of travel from England to France to Italy. I'm writing book 4 now, Eastern Europe and Russia. And Thomas are faced with real situations in current time and real locations, real streets, real train times, distances, buildings, architecture, culture, food. Just everything is so authentic. And they don't have a wand to solve their problems, and they can't fly or walk through a wall or transcend into a different time zone. And and it's just like, I just think that little by little, as they're reading this, they're going to look back at that stuff, and it's just not going to stick as much anymore. And I'm excited about that. I'm seeing that impact. We get thousands of replies and emails across the world, not just nationally. And I'm seeing that impact from kids that are reading it, from parents that are reading it. Thank you for writing this. It's great content. I just got an email yesterday from a woman that listened to an interview we did a couple weeks ago. She bought all 3 books. She goes, "I'm just finishing book 3. They're fantastic. When are the rest coming out?" Another woman said, "I've got book 3. I'm reading it really slow because I know I need to wait till next year for book 4. And what's exciting to me is it's not just fast-paced and exciting. We can talk about literature and the style of writing and why that's so, but then I'm creating this genre that kids love, and I'm not compromising it by using all those other devices, because I think it's an easier way to write when you create the world of Narnia or some post-apocalyptic world or all the different spells or magics or whatever. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking through some of these books. It sounds like you're going from one geographical location to another and kind of tapping into the culture with each of these books.
Correct.
I was reading the description for book 3, The Return of the Prince, and it seems like that is based in Italy.
Correct.
And I see mention of the Black nobility. So when you go through all of these places, are you kind of like delving into the more occulted or hidden history of some of these locations and kind of fleshing that out on the page? Because a lot of people don't even know that the Black nobility existed or exists, and it's just, this is the last place I thought I would find it mentioned.
Right? Yeah, I know. I remember when you were reading that earlier, and you're like, "Whoa, that's like was like a red flag." But yeah, it's interesting. It wasn't my intention when I was writing book 1, and when I was writing book 1, Britfield and Lost Crown, my intention wasn't to write a series. But I, as I was writing it, I was coming up with all this great stuff, and then you had this whole royal mystery, Britfield and the Lost Crown, the sense that Britfield was some royal dynasty that had been erased from history. And it was so cool because I tie in all real history, from the Tudors to the Stewarts to the Windsors, current dynasty. And so it just made sense that there was this group behind everything called the Committee, right? Committee of 300, but we call it the Committee. And so by book 2, and again, I've been researching all of this for the last 12 years. And I like to tell people I've been relearning history for the last 12 years, right? Because practically everything we've learned is a lie, and unfortunately. And so book 2, which it's kind of like, I love book 2. Book 2 is my Empire Strikes Back, because it's pretty intense. Thomas are now 13 years old. They're in France, and we really get into some heavy stuff. Now, with that said, it's lightly threaded throughout this fast-paced adventure and fun and excitement, but it's there. And a lot of course, adults are picking up on it, but I have a lot of students that are very smart and bright, mostly homeschooled, and they pick up on it right away. I did a special surprise lunch for this 13-year-old fan, because her parents know people I know, and they're like, if there's any way you could come to her and surprise her at lunch for her 13th birthday. So I showed up this last week, and she was like just blown away. But she was so articulate and so smart, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like the Committee," and she was like talking about all this stuff, and it's like, she's like, I love that we're like waking her up also. Right. You know what I mean? So on top of doing everything with these books, fast-paced, based on family, friendship, loyalty, and courage, you're learning about all these different educational things like geography and history and art and architecture. You're also learning a little bit about the truth behind the scenes. And that's not our agenda. That's not our push, but it's just there. And they fit. It fits the storyline. And it's like, so I'm not forcing it in there. It's like easy, and like, I know like in book 4 right now, about 65% with book 4, which is Britfield and the Eastern Empire. And I'm introducing, I introduced AI a lot in book 3, and quantum computers and things like that. And now I'm getting into the one world digital currency. And Yeah, I mean, and it just works. You know what I mean? Because there's someone I introduced in book 2 and then built in book 3. Her name's Kate. She's kind of a computer technology geek, and so she's kind of taking care of the communications for the resistance, which is behind, which is against the committee, and so there's always a new threat in every book that meanwhile with Tom and Sarah trying to get their family and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of threads, there's a lot of subplots. But that stuff is threaded through, and it's fun. It's great to put it in there, and it's like you guys would read these things and go, "Whoa!"
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like, it was just like, yeah.
And
yeah. I know people that were reading book 2, and they were saying when it came out in 2 years ago, I think it was July 4th of all things, July 4th in 2021.
Nice.
And people were like, "What are you, prophetic?" And I'm like, no, I just because everything in there, like it's like exactly what's happening right now. And I'm like, I just do my research. It's like we know their plans,
Well, when you learn the truth properly in history and in the present, then you get glimpses of the future for sure.
And their plans are more obvious and like in your face than they've ever been before. So it's like,
right, you're not pulling.
So it sounds like these books are taking place in like modern times. Then is that right? Okay,
that's really important. It's like it's happening right now. So book 1's in England. It's fun because it starts up in Yorkshire and then you move down to Oxford. And I think Oxford's fun because it's the world of academia, right? And so we're kind of introducing that world. And then it goes to Windsor, and so we're introducing this whole idea of royalty, and then to London and the city of London, the sort of banking and economic side of it, and then down to Canterbury, which is the sort of religious side. And then in book 2, it's in France, kind of the main places. Book 3 is Italy. We cover Florence, Rome, and Venice. Totally.
Oh boy!
Yeah, and then and it's funny too because like book 3 is 575 pages, and I'm not like I live to write. I don't write to live. You know what I mean? Like Like, or no wait, I don't live to write. You know what I mean? I write to live. So you get these people that are like pumping out 800-page books. That's not my objective. It's just if the story dictates it. But with book 3, it's like you have Florence, and it's like that's a major thing, and then Rome. I can't just pass over Rome, and then Venice, and so
definitely.
But now it's kind of fun with book 4. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Is book 4 will be right around 450 pages. That's going to be kind of my objective, to hit. But I'm doing more countries. We start in Vienna, Austria, and then we have a part in Berlin, which is really cool. And then we go to Prague, and then we go to Krakow, and then Warsaw, and then all the way up to the Baltic Sea, and then Estonia, and then St. Petersburg, Russia, and Moscow. And so I'm incorporating more of countries now, which is a lot of fun. And then book 5 is Asia, book 6 is South America, and then book 7 is United States. So,
Excellent. All right. Yeah, great.
So, if you are touching on parts of history in these books, starting out in Vienna and Austria, do you mention anything about some of these dynastic banking families while you're there? And then as the story, I mean, you don't have to give us any spoilers.
Sure.
But is there going to be any kind of allusion to this whole special military operation in Ukraine that we're currently watching?
I don't go that current, and that to me is just a bit of, I mean, we know what it is, and it's complete nonsense. It's just money laundering and flash over substance. I don't get distracted with that crap. People are like, "Oh, Russia, why are you putting on?" It's like, this crap will be done in a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like we're writing legacy books, like in 20 years from now, we'll be in every library in the world. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't get caught up in these distractions. So it's a good question. I don't get that succinct, but by hitting on particular families, and sometimes the names are changed a little bit. I do hit the dynasties, like the Habsburgs, because it works in book 4, and the Romanovs, and etc. for the Russian stuff. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that I'm bringing in that history, and I talk about a lot of stuff that is not mainstream by any sense, but for people like you and for myself, we know it all and we research it. So when someone's reading this in 5 years or 7 years, they're like, whoa. I talk about social credit scores, and that's happening over in China right now. That's obviously the UN's big, push to get that nonsense, their dream world and stuff. So, we're getting a lot of that threaded in there, not because I'm trying to get it in there, just because it fits the narrative of the story. So when you're reading this in 5 years, you're like, whoa, this guy was a prophet, and I'm not, I just do my, I pull the curtain and I do my research. So.
Sure. Yeah. It's all right there. Well, I think for some context, I've recently been starting to refer to the way that the globalists or the oligarchs, to use those terms, push their propaganda on the masses is through what we might call a Trojan horse mechanic or technique. And by that, I mean, they do this with media all the time. They put in media genuinely beneficial and objectively valid life lessons, stories, things like this. I think that's one of the reasons why some of these big books that I think are probably game planned by think tanks are so successful. Oh, sure. Seems like Harry Potter's one of them. But that's not the only series. You had the Bond series. You've got many different series out there that, you know, they tell an aspect of reality that is true, but woven within that is the payload, is the propaganda they're trying to get you to imbibe. So the reason why that, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, you know, if you want to know what they're doing or what they're planning, just watch the most recent James Bond movies. They're always giving you that. I remember in Quantum of Solace, they were talking about water. And it's like, what does water mean? And it's just like, there's a great documentary out there called Blue Gold. It talks about how you know, the normal suspects have been buying up water and you know, Nestle, how they've been coming into the lakes up in northern America and Michigan, and you know, and doing, like, you know, pennies on the dollar deals, and then selling it for, you know, 1,000%, and you know, just like with food and water, they want it all. They you know, they don't want to give it to you. It's like you can't collect your own water. And I'm not going to go off on that tangent, but all the Bond movies have that. And you know what I mean? They can't help themselves. And then also Mission Impossible, they cover a lot of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you want to know what they're doing right now or what their plan is for next year, watch those movies.
They're telling you, they tell you all the time.
Yeah, they tell you.
So part of the reason I mention that is that one reaction I've seen when we start to talk about how corrupted our media is to throw everything out. Everything that you've received or imbibed from media is tainted or corrupted or designed to manipulate you or make you believe a lie in some way. And you have to throw every little thing that you've ever appreciated or loved or enjoyed in your life completely out the window. I don't think that's accurate. I think what these guys do is they use the lie sandwich. They got bread that might not be a lie. That's probably usually true, because in order for you to resonate with it, it has to be true. But in there is a sandwich of lies, and it's discernment that's critical. So the reason I bring this up is because there's a huge portion of my audience, including my wife, including me, found Harry Potter to be some of the most amazing literature. And for me personally, certainly my wife, it had a lot of, like, improvement to her view of the world and things like this. That doesn't mean that there's not things to be discerned, of course, but it also doesn't mean that we should just throw it all out and be like, oh, well, all of these seminal moments you've had from your childhood are totally and completely corrupted, and you just need to completely abandon it. I don't think
I agree. You got to be very careful with that. And I mean, let's be honest. Harry Potter is exceptionally well written, and I studied it in depth. I mean, I read all of the books, of course, but I studied them, and I've said it before. I mean, it's like their use of vocabulary, and I'm using the word "their" use of vocabulary, their quote unquote use of vocabulary is extraordinary. Their use of different ways of writing something. I've never seen it in fiction. Meaning, you know, Tom ran across the carpet. Tom drifted on his foot tips, or on his feet. Tom swiftly. I mean, it's never described the same way. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, there was a team that was behind this, and they're no fools. You know what I mean? But the thing is, they have basically unlimited resources. So they put, you know, there are none of these sort of like, you know, grassroots that just pop out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I mean, they funnel hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, into their crap, into their agenda. And it is. Let's look at television right now. You know, 98% compromised. I mean, it's sheer crap. Netflix is disgusting. I'm sorry. I'm so sick of it. I mean, I used to like it because I was one of the guys that, you know, that got 5 DVDs at the time. And it was fun because it was just programs and other movies and stuff like that, and being in the industry and stuff. And then the streaming, and I thought, well, you know, and I tried it, and it's like anything that they touch is just crap, and it's so sad, and it pisses me off because they've got billions of dollars. They're bringing in top actors and stars, script writers, and it's just every single thing they touch is tainted and crap with their agenda, which is their function. That's the point. But yeah, I mean, like Hollywood is notorious for this. I mean, Hollywood was created not to entertain us, but to compromise us.
Exactly.
You know, it was always about dividing the family. And two things about Hollywood you need to know. Number one, they're bankrupt. They've been bankrupt for decades. You don't pour in $100 million or $200 million into a movie that tanks, and I mean tanks bad. Movies need to make between 4 to 5 times their budget to break even. And so, you know, I mean, look at Disney. You know, how's it going? How's it going for Disney right now? Thank goodness. I mean, their attendance is down by 40%. They're selling off assets, but the point is they just interlock. You know, they merge together. They you know, bankrupt or chapter 13 this. I mean, it's like this big, you know, chess game. You know what I mean? It's movement. So it's not about money because they really have an endless supply. You know, like in a sense, Pictures will never go bankrupt. If it goes bankrupt, it doesn't matter. It's not the assets aren't going to be sold off. Someone else will buy it. And
I mean, that's one of the biggest tells that we're dealing with the propaganda business is it's not profitable. Most businesses are there to make money. It's not there to make money. It's there to propagandize, you know?
It is. And so I'm kind of saying that like about the money, that it's just like, well, how can they do it if they're not making money? And it's like, it's not about the money. If it was about the money, family entertainment is the most successful industry in the world. For every R, this is statistically figured, for every R movie that you turn into a PG-13 movie, you make more money. For every PG-13 that you turn into a PG movie, you make more money. For every profanity word that you remove from a movie, you make more money. Every nude scene, you make more money. Hollywood knows that. The very essence, the reason that the entire industry is created is to compromise you. I was just doing an interview last night or yesterday for like an hour with a gentleman, and we're talking about this really like movie that he liked, and he said, all of a sudden there's the nude scene, you know, and he goes, I just fast forward through that. And I said, the entire movie existed for the nude scene.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that, right?
Oh, yeah.
The entire series, like you get into the series, right, and it starts out really good. You know, it's like a great story, great plot, and I'm not dissing, you know, a lot of the talent that's in Hollywood. I mean, most of them aren't part of it. They just want to earn a living. But you got some talented writers, and they're crafting these great stories, and you get these great actors, and then boom, by episode 5 or 6, here comes the agenda, or my new friend, or the person that just moved in, or the new partner, and their lifestyle. And the entire series exists for that. You know,
exactly.
There was a series that was relaunched. Was it with Keith Sutherland, where he takes over the presidency?
Oh God, I think it's a new one. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
It was out a couple of years ago, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I like him, you know, as an actor per se. I mean, I love 24. And it had Susie Q as a FBI, and the first 2 seasons were great, and then boom, the 3rd season, first episode, here comes the most disgusting, vile, graphic scene you've ever seen. I was out, I was done, and the series is over. So well done. You know what I mean?
You're right.
So anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, some more context for folks. Like another thing that I've heard from people is that when they learn that story and music and video games and all the things that we love about our culture have been used as vehicles for propaganda and manipulation, it makes people very reticent to what you're doing, which is kind of doing it in a positive way. And I wanted to speak to this a little bit because historically speaking, the main way that citizens of a culture or a tribe or a nation figured out a way to live in that nation productively was through story and method narrative. That's the primary vehicle of instruction that people have gotten in order to live productive lives in society. So you can't really get away from that. You have to train people somehow. And it turns out, because I study a lot of psychology, one of the best ways to do that is using stories, myths, fables, things like this when you're a kid. So, you know, I wanted to let people know and give you a chance to comment on this as well, that because you're doing it, somebody might think, oh, well, you're just as bad as them because you're using story to push your own narrative. And what makes you superior to anybody else? Well, it's because there is actually an objective difference. It turns out when you use propaganda to turn people into sick, twisted sex addicts and pedophiles, that's not a good thing. When you do it to make people, to families sacred and restoring the sacred bond between men and women and things like this, it actually has a really positive benefit on society. So you wanted to comment on that at all?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I wanted to come back to what you said too. It's like I didn't mean like all movies are bad. I was just I was kind of giving you the framework of it, and it only comes from the top. people of pushing the propaganda and getting that stuff in there. I mean, thousands of those films have those little. That's why they introduce something. You know, it's the Tavistock Institute out of England that dictates most of this stuff, and so it's like, you know, it's like global warming, you know what I mean? And so that starts to come into television programs and movies, and then it's this thing, and then it's that thing. But there's great movies. I mean, I love some of the movies I grew up on. I mean, it's like, you know, Sound of Music, still one of my favorite movies. The fourth highest grossing film in cinematic history, still, right? The Great Escape, Steve McQueen. You know, and the Bourne Identity. I thought those were phenomenal, fantastic. Really relaunched that sort of spy thriller, action thriller. Really, the relaunch of James Bond with Daniel Craig borrowed from the Bourne. That kind of edgy, up close fighting scenes, things like that, which was based on Philippine stick fighting. But coming back, what was your question exactly? I just wanted to kind of come back and address that.
Well, I was just
like, you know, yeah.
For the folks who are saying, well, hey, you're using story to propagandize our children. What makes you any better?
Yeah, and it's like, but I don't have an agenda per se. I'm writing fun, fast-paced action adventure series, and while I'm doing it, I'm incorporating wonderful areas of geography. I'm incorporating real history, architecture, culture, literature that children, adults that are reading the book series are learning and getting to experience. We have maps in the front. We have interactive website, Britfield.com website. We can see all these locations, Yorkshire, Oxford, interactive maps. And so I'm kind of really coming from it from an educational standpoint, with everything that's true, and not really threading in. I'm not introducing things that aren't unnatural, put it that way. Magic is a very unnatural thing. Occultism is unnatural. So I'm not poisoning my literature with things that are unnatural and really ungodly.
Mm-hmm.
But I am using story as the narrative, and story's always been a great narrative.
Yeah, and from my perspective on this, our job is to indoctrinate our children. You have to do it. There's no getting around it. If you don't indoctrinate your children, somebody else will, and they're probably not doing it in a good way. So the key is to do it in a way that maximizes their sovereignty, respects their dignity and spiritual free will, and gives them real practical life skills and real fundamentally true beliefs that they're going to be useful in their life. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, let me interject too, like, because again too, it's like creativity is our driver, and two things about creativity. We can dive into this too. We as a nation and even globally are in a creativity crisis, and have been by 30 years for the last 30 plus years, and it's all been documented. There's a great book out there called The Creativity Crisis. There's just all types of things on it. Whereas on the other side of that, creativity is the single most important skill set in the world. And creative applicants, doesn't matter what the job is, creative applicants are hired 5-to-1 to 10-to-1. And we can dive into this. So what we're trying to do is, you know, the industry is giving you a fish for the day and you have to come back tomorrow and beg for it. We're trying to teach kids how to fish and think for themselves. And look, I'm not telling you how to think, but I'm teaching you how to think. You know what I mean? Like, the skills of approaching things, looking at them from a different angle, stepping back, you know, using your own common sense to deal with things. And it's interesting. There was a study done. The gentleman's name was George Land, and he created this creativity test for NASA. This is like decades ago, and that's a whole other story, NASA. But the astronauts, quote unquote astronauts, needed to be creative. You know, they analytical, smart, and, you know, mathematical, but they also needed to be creative. So he created this incredible creativity test, and then he took it out to schools because he was interested to see how children would do. And he taught, and he tested 5-year-old students. And at 5 years old, children were scoring 98% out of 100. Basically, for every 100 kids, 98 little geniuses. He tested them again at age 10, and the score dropped to 30. And he tested them again at 15, and it dropped to 12%. And that's all by design. That's specifically through the socialistic institutionalized public school system, which is based on the factory model. And so what they did is the schools successfully educated creativity out of children, whereas creativity is at the base of everything in our world. You know, out of creating a company, creating a product, creating a family, you know what I mean? And everything. I mean, creating a fun traveling trip. I mean, everything is based on creativity. We're all born creative. So if you're watching and you say, well, I'm not a creative, I'm not an artist, you're born creative. It's a gift from God. We all are born creative, but often that gets displaced. And the funny thing about those scores that he found is that even though and I think it was like by 30, the scores were coming back at 2% creativity. Brutal, right? Just void of creativity.
Yeah.
But you can come all the way back to almost 100% of creativity. So it's not like you lose it and can never get it back. You just have to sort of put yourself in that environment. When we're in that environment, when we're doing something fun and creative, whether we're writing a book or building something or creating a company or whatever it is, it fires our synapses. We use our entire brain. That's a bunk myth too, that we only lose 10%. We use 100% of our brain when we're thinking and doing things. It lessens stress. It calms us down. It has all these wonderful benefits. Creativity has all these wonderful benefits. And guess who knows that? And that's why they're trying to get creativity out of schools. So,
Meeting time. When the store shelves are empty in the coming months, how are you going to provide protein for your family? Protein is a critical building block for survival, and knowing that you have sous vide, freeze-dried all-American beef from ranches in Texas that have never, ever given their cows an mRNA jab, on your pantry shelf will give you tremendous peace of mind. Meet NoBugsBeef.com, a veteran-owned distributor of premium freeze-dried beef that's stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for maximum shelf life. No Bugs beef cubes will stay shelf-stable for more than 10 years without refrigeration and with maximum nutrition and flavor. Just soak it in water for 15 minutes and it's ready to eat. These aren't your typical survival meats. They're premium cuts of ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin, and chuck. Don't let your family get caught without premium protein on your shelves. Go to NoBugsBeef.com and use the promo code BADLANDS for an additional 10% off your order. That's NoBugsBeef.com, promo code BADLANDS. And just a quick reminder to check on Badlands Marketplace on BadlandsMarketplace.com, where you'll find NoBugsBeef.com and a growing number of America First businesses listed. Help build our parallel economy by shopping America First.
When I invented MyPillow, my passion was to help each and every one of you. And 20 years later, all of your support is what keeps us going. Because of you, we've been able to create thousands of USA jobs and help millions get the best sleep ever. To thank you, my employees and I are bringing you a limited edition MyPillow. The Giza Elegance MyPillow is made with my patented adjustable fill, the most amazing cotton, and a 2-inch pipe gusset. It has 4 custom loft levels, machine washable and dryable, and you get my 60-day money-back guarantee and 10-year warranty.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your limited edition 20th anniversary MyPillow queen size. Retails for $69.98, now only $19.98. That's right, get a queen size MyPillow for only $19.98.
From all of us here at MyPillow, thanks America!
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like they almost were trying to scout for talent too when they were doing the standardized testing to find people to kind of pull into their system. But like to think that we don't need creativity is insane. Interestingly enough, I'd say that creativity is the key to getting us out of the situation that our society is currently in.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And yeah, I think the Tavistock is.
But you have kids that can't, that can't articulate anymore. They can't think. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like these are some interesting scores. But based on this one woman, Dr. Kim, she's out of William and Mary. She wrote The Creativity Crisis. She spent over 20 years researching over 300,000 scores and students. And she said since the 1990s, schools have killed curiosities and passions, narrowed vision, lowered expectations, stifled risk-taking, destroyed collaboration, narrowed minds, killed deep thoughts and imaginations, forced conformity, solidified hierarchy. As a result, children have become less emotionally expressive, less energetic, less humorous, less imaginative, less talkative, less verbally expressive, less less lively and passionate, and less perceptive, and less likely to see things from a different perspective. Does that sound like our generation right now? You realize that the billions of dollars that was spent on what did Hitler say? Give me one generation of children and we'll change everything. So that's what they're doing. That's their playbook. What's that?
Well, we actually know a pretty legendary psychotherapist who said the same thing, only with the different kind of meaning behind it. That one generation of children raised properly would kind of melt all the problems. Yeah. And the same guy, he preached about the inner child, and I think that's where creativity comes from. And we all have one, but these school systems systematically like induce a sort of trauma to our inner children, and it shrinks and it becomes less prevalent. I think that is why we see those drops.
Do you know how many millions of children today that are skilled and talented and amazing don't know it and don't think it? Because they weren't able to get a 90% on some stupid math test, or they didn't score well on a test that was created by the very industry that like the SATs. Just so you know, I mean, like everything that you know is a lie. The SATs system was designed by a gentleman. It was for the military, and after 5 years, it failed to accomplish what he was hoping to do with the test, and then eventually it was adapted into the school system. The IQ test was actually designed to do the absolute opposite. It wasn't designed to figure out someone's intelligence. It was to try to find where they were lacking in certain areas so they could be improved. So again, everything that you've learned is the opposite of the truth. You know, this whole testing system was created by the system to support the very system. You know, it's like accounting, right? And I was an MBA program and graduate work. Accounting is the most ridiculous, stupidest system. But what happens is the enemy had to create an entire subject world to support their illegal taxes. And that's really what the whole accounting thing, because accounting really, running a business, it's pretty simple. You know, it's pluses and minuses.
I mean,
you take in and you take out. I mean, it's not this convoluted, huge, all this stuff. And they did that. They created it. They created the subject of economics, which is totally confusing and doesn't make any sense. It's all to support their nonsense. I mean, again, this is
basically any place where you see an overly complicated way of doing things in society. Think to yourself, wait, hold on, ding, 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 ding. There's a scam happening here, and this is the cover for it. You know,
right? It's like every year, it's like talk to your accountant, like, oh yeah, there's some new tax laws coming in, and they're really confusing. And I'm like, but none of that should even exist constitutionally, Right.
So well, and the other thing too is that
thousands of laws, thousands of tax codes. For what? For something that shouldn't exist to begin with. But go ahead.
Sure. Well, this is why it's part of the other reason that they push all this is they want to dumb you down. They want to make you think you're stupid, a lunatic, incompetent. You can't do anything successful, and you need them to be successful in life. You need their accountants, you need their tax experts, you need their business planners, you need their financial analysts, you need their doctors, you need their psychologists, because you're too stupid and moronic to do anything. And what the hell do you know? But the funny thing is, psychologically, that interestingly enough, and this all gets back down to family, when you have somebody who actually believes in you and sees the infinite potential that you have inherently, then you actually start to believe in yourself and you start to mobilize and activate some of your intelligence and creativity. So we have to acknowledge the brilliance of this system, because it works brilliantly. It works insidiously, but it works brilliantly, So, we've been mentioning and butting up against a couple subjects I want to spend some time defining because they're really important. And they are not defined. So I want to try to do that, especially with you, since you seem to be pretty aware of these things. It's occultism and magic. Before we give our definitions, I want to give you a chance to, can you define these terms for us that you've used so much in this interview?
Well, I don't think I really could. I'm very aware of it, and I don't tend to like to talk about it in the interviews because I'm just an author here talking about Britfield and Lost Crown. But it's very prevalent. It's at the core of everything. I mean, if you want to go biblically, it's been at the very beginning of the fall, from Genesis onward, right? And whether you believe it or not, they do, and it's evil, and it's at the core of all that is going on. That is evil. That is wrong. Especially the occultism. You know what I mean? you're either a member of it or you're not. If you're not a member, then you're not a part of that club, as you guys have probably talked a lot about.
And then there's also like this fake occultism, because they try to keep these secrets, play their cards close, but then welcome in all these outsiders and give them like sort of fake occultism,
Right.
and the whole thing is just cloaked in lies and misdirection. It's like, who knows what's real when it comes to the stuff.
Put it this way: this is one of the most profound statements, and it just keeps coming back, by William Casey, who used to be the director of the CIA, and he said, "We know our job will be done when everything the American people believe is a lie."
Yeah.
Think about that. I know you guys have heard that before, but think about that statement for a minute. And every now and then it'll hit me again. And I'm like, number one, what a psychopathic lunatic, right? I mean, like, that's your objective. Hey, that's a great objective. I want to burn down the entire world. That's my goal for life, right? I mean, just a sicko. And they're all just sickos. And I mean, really, the devil has scraped the bottom of the barrel with these guys, and they all think they're elitist. I hate that word. There's nothing elite about them. They're common criminals that have committed extraordinary crimes, nothing more. And their clubs are just pure debauchery. I mean, you have the losers of losers. They're not intelligent. All these things that you've seen and heard. This big CEO of this company, and look at Amazon out there and Facebook. They're all jokers. These are actors that are put into a place. They can't even spell their name or tie their shoelaces. They're complete and total idiots. I mean, Facebook is a $500 million DARPA project that went live on the day that Facebook was launched. I mean, just do your research. All of it's a lie. There's no overnight success. They steal your money and then they give it to themselves. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So, let's see where to begin with this. Is the definition of occultism, I think that fits very well, and it speaks to a lot of what we're talking about, is simply hidden. There's things that are hidden, occulted, right?
Good way to look at it.
Now, there's that the word is used in context a little differently, depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to like Bible thumping Christian, basically anything that isn't reflected as truth within Scripture tends to get the label occultism or evil, or untruth, something like that. I would say that occultism generally, when we generally think of occultism, you can think of hidden, secret forms of worship, psychology, or belief in the world. Sure. One of them is, what is the nature of God? One of the oldest and most influential forms of occultism is Gnosticism. Gnosticism is itself is like a rebranding of a much older occult tradition of Arianism, Manichaeism. And this is a dualistic belief in the universe, that in the universe we have a God of light and a God of darkness. They are equal, and they are constantly battling each other for the heart and souls of the people in between, which is us, living life forms. Gnosticism takes it a step further and says that the world and the universe itself is actually the kind of wet fever dream of a batshit crazy evil God that created reality, and everything in it is evil fundamentally to the core. And the only way to truly escape evil is to destroy and marginalize the creation itself as much as possible, and to sin against this evil God. So that aspect of Gnosticism is basically the variant that's very popular today, is the idea that in order to bring about the redemption of the world, we have to create as much sin as humanly possible on earth, and we need to get everybody else to do it with us.
Just like the Frankists and the
Just
Sabbateans.
like the Frankists and the Sabbateans, which is another movement. Sabbateans, 1666, Shabbatai Tzvi, who got all of his followers to do wife swapping, to diddle their kids, to engage in orgies, believing that they needed to bring as much sin as humanly possible into the world. 100 years later, the Frankist Jacobians, the same people that created the Bavarian Illuminati, who popularized communism, who helped inculcate the French Revolution, they had their own branch and version of this.
It certainly explains the kind of stuff we see happening today.
Right.
It might be hard. It's not something everyone wants to swallow, but it definitely explains the mindset of these people.
But I think it's interesting too. I would say too, there's a duality. Number one, like as a nation, unfortunately, I don't mean this to be insulting, but it's the most dumbed down generation in history, and it's unfortunate. And it's not necessarily by people's fault, although people should be awake and alert and do their own research and read. And it's like everything from, my gosh, when they're poisoning your water, spraying it in the air, poisoning the food, radio waves, frequency waves, everything. But with that said, I also think that we're actually the most awake generation, especially in the last 2.5 years. And I think that is extraordinary. I think that's exciting. And instead of really hammering, and I don't like, especially on my interviews, I don't like to be on the negative or the fear side, because there's plenty of people that can come in and scare you with that stuff, you know, and it's fine because it wakes up a lot of people. And I was there 10 years ago, you know what I mean? I was like taking it in, and I was like, what? As I was learning, right? I was like, I've never even heard of that, you know? But I think it is, there's an extraordinary movement happening right now. I mean, millions of people for the first time are questioning even the flu shot. And I think that's extraordinary. They're questioning not just big government, but local government. And you have the soccer moms and soccer dads getting involved in local politics and standing up to these school boards that have been running the show for the last half century, right? With their communistic crap. And it's always boiling the frog, you know, they don't just do it all. You didn't have a drag queen coming in that guy should be hung by piano wire. Period. I mean, I said this on a show. There's a reckoning coming right now for the people that are doing what they're doing, especially to the children. The likes this world has never seen. And I mean, all of these people that are involved in it, I don't care if they're useful idiots or come from the top. They're on borrowed time right now. They are on borrowed time. But with that said, it's exciting, and we're seeing that in education, because we're talking about the institutions, but we're in a homeschool revolution right now. And we've gone from 5 million to over 15 million homeschool kids within the last 2 years. We have almost 1,100 charter schools just in the United States. And of course, the government's trying to attack the charter system, and they're trying to attack the homeschools, and they'll fail. You know, it's like the genie's out of the box. You're seeing the last days of Nazi Germany as far as the educational system. Now it might hang on, you know, for the next 5 to 7 to 10 years. But I mean, when you lose, you know, millions of kids from your system, and you're now educating those kids, it's coming back to your quote, the gentleman that said, give me one generation, you're seeing it. I mean, the most brilliantly well-educated, well-rounded kids I've ever met are homeschool. I mean, they're amazing. You know, they're smart, they're soft-spoken, they're well-behaved, they have great leadership qualities. You got 15, 16-year-olds already taking college classes. They're creative. I mean, they're amazing. So anyway, yeah.
Well, you know, there are a couple things. First of all, I'm going to have somebody who works at Badlands upset if I don't say we do not encourage violence in any way, shape, or form on Badlands. So just let me get that out there.
Instead of reckoning's coming, I didn't say what kind of reckoning.
No, you're good. You're good. I just wanted, just in case there are any Media Matter folks or anything like that listening, just get cover our butt.
We know you're watching me, man.
Yeah, all right. So, well, one thing that's encouraging about all this, and an analogy came to mind, it might be useful. How long does it take for your house to get so messy that you can't live in it anymore from not cleaning? It takes years to do that. I know I've had a few friends who have been Olympic champions in this regard, you know, but all it takes is a single day of dedicated work and effort of facing what the situation is and doing something about it to completely restore your house back to a livable condition.
I like that.
I say that because I think what we're seeing right now, and this is kind of what I think you're speaking to, is a good example of this. We have a massive renaissance of parent to child education, which is how it's supposed to be, everybody. Yeah. This whole idea that you can outsource the education of your child to an underpaid, underskilled daycare worker or teacher is total insanity. But we've been deceived into thinking this is the case by insidious, malevolent people. But look how quickly things have turned around. And we haven't even really had a critical mass yet. I mean, wait till the real wake up happens. It's gonna, I'm telling you, we're going to have a renaissance like people have never thought. And the last thing I'll say is we know for a fact, because we're running a charity based on the work of a man named Dr. Charles Whitfield, that any horrific harm that a child has suffered, you can imagine, can be treated successfully with the help of their parents, their friends and family, and their closest allies. We know we got the tools to solve these problems.
And if you can heal from some like family abuse and things like that, you can definitely heal from what the public education system is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. I love what you said. That was so beautifully and eloquently placed. And you're right. And we are coming into that renaissance. And I remember I was doing an interview last year or something, and one of the people associated with LinkedIn, one of the founders or something, said we're in a creative renaissance right now and revolution. And I thought, wow, it's fantastic, because it kind of hit that mass with the creativity crisis, and now it's like reversing. And it's like I love one of them. They said that the new MBA is the MFA. Master in Fine Arts and stuff, because it is where it's and we're seeing it, and it's exciting. So, because I mean, after like decades and decades of like the art classes, that's not really needed. What are you going to do with an art class? And in the music classes, I remember when I was growing up in elementary school, we used to have the semester or something, or I think it was over a certain amount of time, we would play every instrument. We like this month we're learning the flute, and then this month we're learning the trumpet and the violin. I mean, I still remember like playing the violin. It wasn't great, but just having that introduction. And I ended up playing the trumpet for like years, and then getting into the piano. And they found that this is a kind of a funny thing, but with a lot of the tech companies and top companies in the world right now, if you have a musical background, and it doesn't mean that you're a famous musician, just a musical background, you can play a musical instrument and read music, they will hire you 10-to-1 over other candidates, regardless of their background, because they know people that have that musical background are better under crisis, are better managers, better brainstormers, can look at problems from a different way, and are overall more adapting to a job that is constantly changing. So can you imagine that? It's like you go into this job, highly competitive, and it's just like, I played the violin for 3 years, and it's like hired. So, but it's true, because it's the stuff that it
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you one last thing, and also give you an opportunity to address parents and teachers too. So the last question is, how concerned are you about video games and social media, things like this? It seems like these are having a pretty deleterious effect on children and developing minds. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, and they are, and there's tons of information out there about how damaging it is, and that's why it was created. Social media was never created to connect us. We got to remember, it's always the opposite. It's to dumb us down. It's like with Twitter. It's like, it's going to only be 140 characters. You think that was created so you could learn how to speak fluently, or communicate well, right? It's just to dumb you down. It's just stupid. So it's very dangerous. I was teaching marketing classes for a while, and when we got into social media, I had a little hamster wheel with a hamster in it, and I said, that's my idea of social media. Spinning around, you're going around, you're going absolutely nowhere. Investing all this time for what? And I'm not saying that a few good things haven't come out of it. You know what I mean? You've connected with a friend that you haven't seen for a while and stuff like that, but it's not designed for that. Nor is all this media and the video games and things like that. But as a parent, it's up to you. You're the first line of defense against this stuff. And if you have your kids with their cell phones, or especially like at the dinner tables, like that stuff should be shut off and in the other room at the bare minimum. Or when you get home, the phones go away. Or if it is video games, you have some discernment to make sure that they're not Mortal Kombat 6 that your 8-year-old is playing, learning to slice off heads. I mean, literally, well, it's just a video game. No, it's not. I mean, that's horrific. I mean, when I was growing up, it was Pong. I mean, it was
yeah.
I mean, it was pretty basic. But I'm just saying, and some of the stuff could be cool, and there are some good programs out there. But I'm just saying, a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? It's just like when you have too much of it. When you're spending 4 hours on video games or 4 hours on social media. I frankly hate social media. I just think the whole thing's a joke. So it's not where our money or dollar goes in. We might have a few posts here and there and stuff, but it's just silly. It wasn't created for the benefit of you. So
I think there's an aspect of, like, imagine if social media and video games were, they're used for a certain ends, it seems like. But what if we flipped it around?
I agree.
I would love to see that, because, we have all these minds who are hooked on that, video game kind of mindset. What if you started programming them to like wake people up? You know what I mean? There's this Jesus game that's coming out.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. It's like a Jesus RPG or something.
And it's like that, right? Super like information and history dense. Mm-hmm. And then there's, we could do social media could be used better. I mean, even though they are programmed for all of these horrible things, they definitely have, I'd say, net negative effect. There is like those things. Still, life finds a way to make good things happen out of it. Like you said, connecting with someone you otherwise never would have seen again. I know my father wouldn't have remarried if it wasn't for.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, like take the cell phone, right? I mean, it's just like it's sad to see people obsessed with it. It's like you walk into like a coffee place and like everyone's like this. You know what I mean? And it's just like, what are you, a doctor waiting for the results on your heart transplant? I mean, right. I mean, what is so fascinating that you can't stand for a minute or talk to your friend. I mean, it's disgusting. But I mean, like, are you kidding me? Like, I could be wherever I go. I've got my I can text. I can make phone calls. I could do interviews. I could do research. I mean, it's like in this little thing. It's amazing. You know, so there's the good and bad of it. I mean, it's just like it's incredible. It's like, I mean, really, as a company too, it's like, you know, you got your laptop and your cell phone. You can operate from anywhere in the world, technically, right? Like what we're doing right now.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to give you a chance as we're closing up here. I know as an aspiring parent and speaking to a lot of parents, a lot of parents feel really disillusioned, just totally overwhelmed with the kind of situations and challenges they encounter. When it comes to eating entertainment, it's huge. It's one of the biggest challenging aspects of raising your child, just giving them enough stuff to keep them occupied and that, you know, incredible curiosity satisfied. It seems like Britfield has a lot to offer. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of, you know, show that off a bit, and then also address parents in general in any way that you'd like to. So go ahead.
Sure. And yeah, the Britfield series is a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun with it and impact literally across the nation and the world. I'm getting a lot of feedback from parents that it's so fun. That's not just their kids that are getting excited about reading the books, but they're reading the books also. With their kids or to their kids, or after the kids have read them and discussing it. And so that, to me, like, I don't plan those kind of things, but it's exciting. And I think at the end of the day, what I've done is I'm competing against the stuff that's out there. You know, I've created a very fast-paced, fun, exciting story based on family, friendship, loyalty, and courage that is educational and also instilling the senses of creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. So it's a fun series. The website's great to work off of. We created Britfield and Lost Crown theatrical play last year and launched it this year. And so we took book 1, 384 pages, and got it into a 2-act, 90-minute theatrical play specifically for elementary and middle schools. We piloted it last year to great success. Again, we're trying to counter the musical, right? Musical theater, which, you know, again, you're alienating 90% of all kids that ever want to go into theater. And just because a child wants to go into theater doesn't mean they want to be an actor. But theater is another one of those creative environments that a child learns so much, working as a team, memorizing lines, telling a story, keeping the fourth wall, but breaking the nervousness of getting up in front of people. I mean, it does 10 things at once just to have a child, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, come in and be part of a great play. And so, you know, the Britfield Lost Crown play has over 30 roles, speaking roles. It takes place in present time. It's easy to costume. It's just an amazing thing. So we're excited. So that's another aspect of what we've done.
Excellent. Yeah, as somebody who studies a lot of child psychology and wants to be a parent and all these kind of things, this is a huge resource, guys. There's not a lot of clean media out there, and not a lot of clean media that's actually engaging. Our kids are information machines, and they need as much quality information as possible. And this is part of the reason why, the phrase "it takes a community to raise a child," or "it takes a village" is so appropriate, because you kind of need that. But with something like Britfield, it seems like you can really get, improve your arsenal of information and education with your kids. And it's critical because there's a very short window between around 4 and 5 and pre-puberty where your kids are just sponges and they want to learn everything they possibly can about everything. And if you can feed that curiosity, you will help them for the rest of their lives. And after puberty, you're not going to have that window. You lose them at that point. They want to get far away from you. So
I think too that kind of 10 to 12 age is still very valuable. That's why our beachhead has always been sort of middle school, sort of 5th to 6th graders, because they're still wonderful. They're still ask great questions, and they're curious. And it's something happens at 13, but anyway, but 14. But I'm just saying, it's like, so that's always been our beachhead, elementary, middle schools, and just inspiring them and giving them a choice and helping them think for themselves. I think, in closing, the best thing you can do for your kids, set aside, is raising them well and doing the best you can with education. And I know a lot of you are like working, 2 jobs and taxed, and it's like you can't even think. But with the homeschool, and I wasn't homeschooled, I have no personal stock in it. I just love something that works. There are so many alternatives that instead of dropping them off at the elementary school, you can drop them off at a homeschool group. And so it's not about one of the parents having to stay home. but get involved in the kids' lives as much as you can. Do creative things with them. I don't care what it takes. But if Saturday afternoon is creativity day, take them to the park. You take them to a fair. You take them to the city, walk around, look at the buildings. You take them along the ocean, and grab an ice cream and look at the tide pools. You go play Frisbee football in the park. You sit around and you guys start writing a story. You play games. You do 100 things. But no matter what, you do not lose that time to instill that creativity, because it is absolutely everlasting, impactful. I still remember creative exercises we did in my 6th grade classroom, because she was an amazing teacher and she was very creative. In fact, it's the first book I wrote, called James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out. And I was a 12-year-old secret agent working for the British government.
Nice.
And I was driving a Ferrari, and my partner was Jacqueline Smith, who's from Charlie's Angels. That goes way back and dates me. And we were chasing this. Yeah, we were chasing this villain. Yeah, Jacqueline, if you're listening, I'm still available. No, I'm just kidding. But and they're chasing this villain around Europe, and it's like, look, 40 years later, Britfield lost crown. So, it's those moments of impact. You just don't know, and it's like, if they want to play a musical instrument, you have to buy it, rent it, and if they get burned out after 3 months, great, get them the next one. I want to play the trumpet. I mean, just don't hold back. And I'm not throwing money at it. Everything I've talked about is free or inexpensive. Most libraries are free, right? Most museums are free. Take them to the museum and spend an hour. You don't have to spend the whole day there. Spend an hour in 1 or 2 rooms and just go around and start looking at what painting did you like? Why did you like that one? Discuss a little bit. And then go grab a nice hot dog, or not a hot dog, but you know what I mean? Like a fun little meal, or an iced tea, or a lemonade, or, and make it a fun event. It doesn't have to be all day. You never go into a museum for 8 hours. It's like, because it's like, right? But do that. That is your job as a parent, to educate and culture your children as much as possible. And it doesn't take necessarily money. So
Yeah.
You might not be able to visit Paris or France, but you can go to the library and get some books. And on a Sunday afternoon in front of the fireplace during winter, flip through that. You know what I mean? Or watch a really fun, travel video on France, and just, and then discuss it with the kids afterwards. I'm telling you, they will remember that for the rest of their lives, and they'll probably end up going to France someday, or wherever, Germany or England. Or I know kids right now, because of this book, are headed off to England. And in fact, the girl I met for lunch that I surprised, the 13-year-old and the parents, they just got back from France and Italy because of the book, and they had the wherewithal. But she's like going to like the Eiffel Tower. She's like, oh my gosh, this is where Tom and Sarah were, and this is exactly the corner that they were in, and it's like, oh my, there's the Ritz Hotel. That's where they had the lunch, and it's like, I brought it to life. I made it exciting and fun, and so
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and the kids love that, and parents love that kind of thing. So, well, hey, listen, Chad, it's been a pleasure. We'll have links to all of your books and your website in the description. Did you want to give a shout out to social media or anything like that before we sign off?
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, we're on Facebook, so you can follow us. But yeah, just check out the Britfield website, and you can buy books pretty much anywhere, and especially on Amazon. But if you buy them on the Britfield.com website, I still sign them while I have time, and you get a nice little bookmark and a sticker. It's kind of fun, so I personalize it. So
nice, awesome, okay. Well, hey, thanks. Really appreciate you coming on and talking to us and writing the series. It's great. We're definitely going to be considering it in my family. So really
thank you. It was an honor to be on.